Welcome back. Super excited moving forward in this lesson. I'm going to talk about and also show you various areas within the interface once you install and open up Android Studio. So I've already opened up the Android Studio, and let's divide and take a look at individual areas such as toolbars, menu bars, your editors, and so forth. The objective and our goal is so that you can understand all of the elements within the user interface within Android Studio. Before you actually dive into the actual coding or text, you need to understand what exactly are we looking at. So let's start with our first, which is our menu bar up on top. But before I actually move forward, let me bring up quickly the PowerPoint slide here. And just on this slide, I've detailed out all of the details that we are going to cover. We're going to cover 6 elements within the user interface. So the Android Studio is basically the official IDE, also known as the Integrated Development Environment for the Android app development. And this is based on the IntelliJ IDE. Okay? There are other IDEs as well. You must have heard of an IDE known as Eclipse, which is popular among Java, PHP, and other developers. They use that quite a bit. IntelliJ IDE is very similar, is also very popular. But for Android, the entire studio is based on this particular integrated development environment. So the first thing we're going to take a look at here is the toolbar, which is the first number 1, which in fact shows up on top within our Android Studio. And this lets you carry out a wide range of actions such as running your apps, launching your Android tool. Then we have the navigation bar. This helps you navigate through your project. So notice I have opened up a sample app here just for demonstration purposes, but I have various sections within the navigation bar, okay, such as layout, resource folder, main folder, there's an SRC folder, app folder, and so on. And if I move this a little aside, you can also see the same structure that is displayed on the navigation bar in the project window here. So it's just a quick way, in fact, to use the navigation bar to navigate within Android Studio. The third is the editor window, which is this part right here, right behind is the editor window. And the editor window is where you would basically write all your code, whether it's XML based or Java based or Kotlin. Depending on the current file type, the editor can change. For example, when viewing a layout file, the editor displays the layout editor. Let me minimize this and demonstrate. So here is the editor window. So at this point, I have activity_main.xml file open. I can navigate to another file, userActivity.kt, Kotlin file. And similarly, I have all these different files open. I can navigate or I can close these files. So for instance, if I were to close the activity main, close all of the rest of these files, I can always open up another one. So if I need to open up the activity sign in, this particular file, just click twice and it'll open up this file. So the editor window allows you to write the actual code and develop your application. Next, we have the tool window bar. The tool window bar runs around the outside of the IDE window and contains the buttons that allow you to either expand or collapse individual tool window. So what do I mean by tool window bar? Minimize this. So this on the left side of the screen, this is known as the tool window, where you have all the tools. And similarly, this part right here down below, where it says build sync, I can also look at the cat here, or open up a terminal, similarly do a to-do, and so on. So this is, both of these are known as the. Next, we have the status bar, which is right below. You can see here, so it says statement started successfully 7 minutes ago. So it simply displays the status of the project and the IDE itself, as well as other warnings and messages that you can see. So apart from the basic 6 elements within the Android Studio, let's minimize this. I want to show you several other areas that are also important. And as you practice more within the Android Studio, it'll become easier for you. For instance, within the main editor, I have either the design tab and the text tab. So at this point, I have the text tab open or visible. If I click on the design, it will switch to the design view. In other words, whichever text I have within the XML file here, if I click on design, it will switch to the design for this particular code that is written, or that text written in the XML format. I can of course zoom in by clicking on the plus sign here, right? That allows me to zoom in. Or I can hold the control key down and use my wheel on the mouse. If I'm using Windows, simply zoom in. Perfect. So that way you can navigate from design tab or text tab, and each tab contains a separate set of tools that you can work with. And not to worry, as we go along, I'm going to demonstrate all of these so you get very comfortable within the Android Studio environment, and that's the objective and the goal for this course. So let's switch back to text and revert back to the actual text. So if I were to make any changes, for instance here, it'll reflect back in the design. Similarly, you'll notice there are several other areas on the left side of the screen, as well as on the right side, options such as Gradle. If I click on this, it'll expand the build itself. I can navigate to the Projects tab, or I can use any of these tools within Gradle. Likewise, switching to the left, going back and forth, right, we can navigate to, let's say, the project which I am looking at. I can also click on the captures or the structure, build variant, and then my favorites. So again, the goal, the idea is so that once or before you in fact think of developing apps, you need to set up the environment. And these tools simply allow you to create the environment that you like, so that you don't have to worry about going back and forth and trying to find all these tools. And I'll also talk about shortcuts later on as well, because every developer has its own methodology of creating app and or configuring the user interface. So it just depends on your own requirement. But the idea is that this IDE is fairly flexible, so you can pick and choose the way you want. You can minimize, or you can close or collapse the windows. Okay, so you can move things around. It's easier that way. So again, it's up to you how you wish to do it. So if I click on the drop down arrow here, which is hide, I can also use the shift and escape key, and this is going to hide. Similarly, I can drag some of these windows, right, and make it bigger, so that if I'm focusing on the design, for instance, of this particular app that I'm developing, I can always take a look at in a bigger window. It's much easier because maybe sometimes I like to really pin down a certain area within the layout itself. So this text layout, I like to really take a look at the actual size, and I can navigate using the scroll bar here, left and right. So I can make the text view smaller, bigger, and so on. Similarly, I can use the image view, click on it, and it will tell me the actual details and show me, in fact, the actual details for this image view. So you get the idea, right? So it's fairly flexible. I can zoom out as well by using these tools or using the control key and my mouse. So that way you can first set up your user environment. Similarly, the menu contains other options such as build Gradle, run the app itself in the emulator. There are SDK tools you can bring up, you can debug your app, and so on. So I'm going to, of course, demonstrate as we go along each of these tools so that you become fairly comfortable with not only the tools, but right now the focus here in this lesson is to make you understand or navigate you through the user interface. So go ahead, practice with setting up your own user interface depending on the way you want it. Maybe it's a little too early at this point, which is fine. But as we move along throughout this course, you can always customize the environment as per your own requirement. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions, post in the discussion area. And with this, let's move to the next lesson.